I will say one of the hardest fasts that I went through with my dad was the hallucinations. Do we know the difference between a hallucination and a delusion? Anybody? It's important for caregivers that we learn this, because we need to be able to tell the doctor the correct symptoms. A delusion is a misbelief, all right? We're all going to hear a point, something like, somebody's stealing my stuff, right? That's going to come. You're going to hear that, they get suspicious, dealing on it. But when they start turning it around, they go, I just saw this man come in my room, take my wallet and run out the door. That's an hallucination. They're as real as the ground is standing on. They can smell them, they can taste them. And what amazes me is sometimes they last for days and days and days. So I'm like, how can someone with short-term memory not know what happened 2 minutes ago, but this hallucination won't go away? I've asked multiple doctors this, with hardly any good answers. I had dinner with Dr. Rosemary Laird. She co-wrote the book, Take Your Oxygen First, with Lisa Gibson, and we're having dinner. I said, listen, now what are you ever going to, she goes, consider their mind as it's stuck on a train track. They're at that part of the stage in the disease where they can't move their thought pattern. It's stuck there. It's not the perfect answer, but it explains a little bit. I went through a 30-day period where every morning my dad woke up and he thought he was on a train. And one day I said, Dad, we're in the house. Bad mistake. He goes, I can feel the train moving. He's got his hands on the table. That's how real it is to him, isn't it? Another day, 9 o'clock in the morning, he starts yelling. There's 5 guys at the other building. They're stealing all the tools. Now, you can't even see that building from the house. There's my bookstore in there, and that building's on the other side of the field, right? He would not, 9 o'clock in the morning, this did not stop. It just went on and on. I took him over there with his walker through the field 5 times to show him there's no one there. That last trip over there, he goes, of course they're not here. They already stole everything. He goes, I'm staying here. You go back and call the police. I'm like, we came together, we're going home together. I'm not leaving you in the field, for one, there, right? Let's go through this on it. This is as real as they can get to these people on it. We can't leave them like this, all right? We got to talk to the doctors. This is time where you got to have a good communication with the doctor, and nobody should be left like that. So just remember that. When they start hallucinating, there is medications to help the hallucinations and all that stuff on it. We've got to be careful with them, but we got to address this problem, because this is bad. The hallucinations usually aren't good. We talk about routine and everything and all this stuff, redirection. Redirection doesn't work at this point. One night I put my dad down. He wasn't in bed 5 minutes. He gets up, his face is like this. I'm like, what's the matter? He goes, I can't go to bed in there. I go, why not? He goes, there's this big dog laying in bed there on my bed. I went and I changed all his bedding that day. Instead of putting the light green blanket on top, I put a big brown heavy comforter. To him, that was a dog on the bed. Let me tell you something. 6 in the morning, I'm so like, shoo, getting this invisible dog out of the house. Nobody got any sleep that night doing it. This wasn't going to stop doing it, man. So we got to address it. It's important that we address it as we go. The sleep patterns, when you start noticing they get upside down, day and night, mixed up together, this is a major sign that they're progressing. I would take that as a sign that they're progressing in the disease on it. The problem is if they're not sleeping, you're not sleeping. All right? If they're getting to this point in the disease, it's important to realize that, I hate to say adults need bedtimes, but we need to keep that routine going and try to get them down the same time at night. And then in the morning, right, 6:30 every morning I used to get up. First thing I do is stick my head in my dad's room and look to see if he was still sleeping. Fine, sleeping, that's good. I'd make a pot of coffee, and that's when I do most of my writing. Every half an hour or so I'd poke my head in there, still sleeping. But if he wasn't up by 8:30, 9 o'clock, I got him up. You're going to let them sleep to 10, 11, 12 o'clock noontime, you're going to pay for that. All right? They're going to be up at midnight doing it. And what are they doing when they're up? It's not going to be anything good. Trust me on this. That's when the mischief happens. They're wandering, stuff like that. So we want to try to get them up at the same time and try to lay them down the same time at night on it. I mean, you do it politely. You know, they are adults. It's not going to happen every night. But we want to keep them in a pattern like that when it gets to that point on it. Doing it. I will say after my dad died, one night I laid down, 10 o'clock. I woke up, it was 7 the next morning. I'm like, what the heck just happened? First night I slept through my dad had been gone 11 months. And that was the first time I slept through a whole night. I had been living on naps for probably 7, 8 years, to be the truth of the matter, doing it. And it took that long for my body to adapt, to get back to a pattern a little bit on doing it. So your body it's pretty amazing what your body and the adrenaline and everything can do on this on it. But something we got to do on this. We got to think about that. There's a lot of after effects on caregiving that we need to understand. Depression is huge. Average caregiver, 2.5 years. on it. So I want you guys to do something. If you know of a person here and in any of your groups and their loved one just dies, call them up. All right? You're going to say, hey, you doing okay? They're all going to say, yes, I'm fine. They're lying. Go over there, pick them up, get them out to lunch. They need a jump start back in their social life. And sometimes you just can't do it on your own. And my dad, all the time before my dad passed, he goes, when he's gone, I'm going to take a vacation. I'm going to go see old friends. I didn't want to leave the driveway. For months and months and months, I didn't want to leave the driveway. I could go to the store. I didn't want to go to the store. It's all part of your, you do this for a decade or whatever. Sometimes it only takes a year and you get set into this patterns. So just give the person a call. Don't take no for an answer. Get them out of the house. Get them a little kickstart back into life here on it. So, who's pulled the driver's license? Let me talk about that for a minute. We get into that point where you got to tell them they can't drive anymore. Usually doesn't go well. All of a sudden, my dad had 101 places to go every day. I'm like, you didn't want to go anywhere for 3 weeks. Now it's a non-stop deal. They're going to make you pay on it. Today, we got a whole different world compared to when I went through this on it. Here in Florida, we're lucky to the point where you can go onto the motor vehicle department, myflorida.com. Go to the motor vehicle department. They have what they call a medical reporting form. You stay anonymous. That's the key to this, really. I told my dad, I go, well, your doctor called the state, and the state took your license. Never thinking that every time I took my dad to that doctor for a year and a half, he goes, you! You need to give me my license back. The doctor's looking at me, I'm like, better you than me, man. You keep your name out of it as you can on it. So you write down their plate number, or you get their license, address, everything. They say 10 days they're going to get an invitation to an on-road driving test. I can tell you, I've only had one person tell me they passed it. So then it goes. They're still going to argue. They're going to give it up. 5 years my dad hadn't driven. Right? I got 2 recliners in my living room. We're watching TV there. He looked at me and he goes, Dad, you need to call the governor and get my license back. And I'm like, man, you're going to the top on this one. You thought this one out a little bit, man. I thought it was over, man. I'm doing it. So a lot of stuff here. Holidays is a little bit early. But the one part of caregiving that everybody needs to realize is that there's a lot of sacrifices involved, right? For the caregiver, we have to make sacrifices. It's all part of the deal. And everybody keeps saying, "This could be our last Christmas. We wanted to have a big." You don't want to turn the house around. We talked about routine and all the stuff. Just the fact that you move a bunch of furniture to put a tree up could throw these people for a ride. Now you put blinking lights on. You got things in the window and everything. All this stuff, all this tinsel. It could be very distracting, building anxiety for these people. So we might need to tone things down. Just something to think about. Even if it's like Thanksgiving, and you got a whole family coming over the house for dinner. You might want to say, let's do this a little different this year. Why don't you guys come between 11 and 12, and you don't want 20 people in the house at the same time with 20 different voices going on. For an example, say if you go into a restaurant, me and you can sit in a booth and have a perfect conversation. Back and forth. You're wondering why the person with dementia is getting confused and some behaviors are coming. You don't realize, first of all, you walk in there, we said, question's the root of all evils. What happens when you go to a restaurant? First thing out of their mouth, table or booth, water or tea. What kind of dressing do you want? It's nothing but questions in there, and they start off doing it. Well, we're not realizing they could be sitting in that booth, and they could be hearing every conversation in that room. When me and you block it off, we're in here having a perfect conversation on it. It might not be the same for them. So we got to think about this. So when you think about it, you bring a Thanksgiving dinner and you got all these people in the house, this is a lot for them. So set up a little pattern, maybe set up a schedule or something like that on it. We have to make sacrifices as we go through this on it.